3 years. 3 years of walking on eggshells, and tonight they finally cracked. If you open your mouth one more time, I swear I will not spare you. Michael's voice was a razor, cutting through the kitchen air thick with the smell of burnt dinner and broken promises. Emma pressed herself against the counter, her fingers finding the smooth edge of the marble, a wedding gift from her mother who thought she was marrying a prince. I'm just begging you, please let me go to Sarah's baby shower just this once. The wine glass exploded against the wall before she could even blink. Red liquid dripped down the white paint like blood, and Emma flinched as his hand came down, hard across her face. The metallic taste of her own blood filled her mouth as her knees buckled. But she stayed upright for one reason alone. "Mommy!" The small voice shattered what was left of Emma's heart. 5-year-old Lily stood in the hallway, clutching her teddy bear. Mr. Buttons, the one Emma had sewn by hand during those long nights when pregnancy insomnia kept her awake, dreaming of the life they'd build together. Lily's eyes were wide, pupils dilated with terror, her lips trembling as she witnessed the destruction of everything she thought was safe. She had seen it all. Michael turned sharply toward the child, and something darker than rage flickered across his features, something that made Emma's blood turn to ice. "Go back to bed," he barked, his voice carrying the weight of threats unspoken. Lily whimpered and disappeared down the hall, her sobs barely muffled by her tiny hands. Emma wanted to cry, but her tears had dried up somewhere between the first slap 2 years ago and the 100th apology that never meant anything. This is the moment, Emma thought, pressing her palm to her swollen cheek. This is when everything changes. She stared at the man who once swore to protect her, who used to bring her coffee in bed and kiss her forehead when she was sick. There was nothing left of that promise, only bruises and silence and the slow erosion of who she used to. But tonight was different. Tonight, she remembered who she was before him. The house grew quiet as Michael passed out in his study, bourbon bottle half empty beside his computer where he monitored their bank accounts, her location, every digital footprint of their lives. Emma stood in the bathroom, staring at her reflection in the flickering fluorescent light. She traced the purple bruise along her jaw, the dried blood at the corner of her mouth. But the wound that hurt most wasn't visible. It was buried under years of isolation, threats, and the systematic destruction of her identity. "You remember being someone else, don't you?" she asked her reflection. "You remember having dreams." Emma pressed her fingers to her lips to keep from screaming. She couldn't wake Lily. Not tonight. If she didn't leave now, she never would. And next time, it might be Lily's face. Moving like a ghost through her own home, Emma stuffed a small duffel bag with essentials, clothes for Lily, her passport, the prepaid phone she'd hidden behind old shoes in the closet, the one Michael didn't know about, the one that represented months of planning, saving quarters from grocery trips, building toward this moment. She grabbed Lily's favorite blanket, the one with the glow-in-the-dark stars they'd counted together during thunderstorms, and folded it with hands that barely trembled. Strange, she thought. I'm calmer now than I've been in years. In her daughter's room, Lily was curled up with her thumb in her mouth, Mr. Buttons tucked under her arm. Emma leaned down, her voice barely a whisper. "Sweetheart, we're going on a little adventure." Lily stirred, her voice thick with sleep. "Is Daddy coming?" Emma's voice caught, but she forced it steady. "No, baby, just us." Within minutes, they were outside. The night air bit against their skin as Emma buckled Lily into the back seat of her Honda, the car Michael barely paid attention to because it wasn't worth enough to control. She didn't let herself look back at the house where she'd lost herself, piece by piece, over 3 long years. The real story was just beginning. Emma drove through the suburbs without headlights for the first 10 minutes, her heart hammering every time she saw headlights in her rearview mirror. Her original plan had been simple, drive straight to her sister's home in Oregon, the sister Michael had systematically cut from her life with guilt trips and manufactured emergencies. But fear clouded her judgment. What if he tracked her phone? What if he guessed where she was going? At a gas station 2 towns over, Emma made a snap decision that would change everything. She would fly. It was safer, faster, harder to follow. The airport buzzed with late night travelers and red-eye commuters. Emma paid cash, clutching Lily's hand with one arm and her duffel bag with the other. The attendant, a tired woman with kind eyes, gave her the only remaining seat on the next flight out. "Gate C-23, the woman said. "Boarding in 20 minutes. Emma didn't ask where the flight was going. She just nodded and kept moving, Lily sleepy and clinging to her like a kitten, her small fingers curled around Emma's scarf. At the gate, Emma finally glanced at the boarding pass. Her stomach flipped. Colorado Springs. That wasn't Oregon. But there was no time to change, no time to think. Michael could already be looking for them, and every minute counted. She tightened her grip on Lily and boarded. The plane. The cabin lights were dimmed as Emma moved down the aisle with her head low, flinching when the flight attendant greeted her with professional cheer. Her seat was toward the back. She settled Lily against the window, tucking the star-spangled blanket around her small frame. Only when Lily's breathing deepened into sleep did Emma allow herself a moment to breathe. If I hadn't left tonight, maybe tomorrow I wouldn't be alive. She had no idea where they were going, but she knew what they'd left behind, and that was enough. For now. "Excuse me, can I sit here? The plane's full." Emma looked up, startled. The man was tall, maybe in his mid-30s, wearing a plain gray sweater and jeans that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget, though she couldn't tell why she thought that. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd run his hands through it too many times, and there was a quiet exhaustion in his voice. Not rudeness, just bone-deep weariness. "Of course," she murmured, shifting slightly. He offered a tight nod and slid into the seat beside her, adjusting a slim leather carry-on under the seat in front of him. For a few seconds, there was only the hum of the plane around them and Lily's soft breathing against the window. Emma tugged her scarf higher, pulling it over the bruise on her cheek. The fabric scratched against her skin, but she'd become used to hiding. Out of the corner of her eye, she could feel him glance at her, not prying, just aware. She shifted, trying to turn toward Lily more, shielding her face in the shadows. But something about his presence felt different. Not threatening, not demanding, steady. As the plane lifted off, Emma watched the city lights fade beneath the clouds. The finality of it all broke something inside her, and tears came without permission. She raised her hand quickly to cover her face, but it was too late. The man beside her didn't speak. He didn't turn toward her with awkward sympathy or ask invasive questions. He simply reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded tissue, and held it out to her. Emma hesitated, then took it. "Thank you," she whispered. He gave a quiet nod and looked straight ahead. In that small gesture, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced in years, simple human kindness, with no strings attached. "You're traveling alone?" Emma asked, surprising herself with the question. He turned slightly, his eyes meeting hers. They were gray-green, like storm clouds over water. "Yeah." His voice was low, calm. It didn't ask for attention or demand answers. "Me too. Sort of." Emma glanced at Lily. He followed her gaze and gave a soft, understanding smile. "She's your daughter?" "Yes." "Lily. She's 5. She sleeps like someone who knows she's safe," he said gently. Emma felt her throat tighten. She looked down, brushing a hand across Lily's forehead. "I hope so." Silence returned, but it was different this time. Not awkward, not heavy. It was the kind of silence shared by people who don't need to fill every space with words. Two strangers, both carrying storms, had found themselves beside each other in the sky. Not by choice, but maybe not entirely by accident either. As the plane touched down, reality hit Emma like a physical blow. She had no plan, no working phone, no clear destination. People hurried past in the terminal, reuniting with family, calling, "Read shares, heading home to lives that made sense." Emma stood still, lost. The man, she still didn't know his name, paused beside her near baggage claim, hands in his coat pockets. "You waiting for someone?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, I made a mistake. This isn't where I was supposed to go." He looked at her, really looked at her, and she felt exposed and seen in a way that should have been terrifying, but somehow wasn't. "If you don't have anywhere to go," he said gently, "I know a place." Emma stiffened. "Here it comes. The catch. The price." "It's not in the city," he added quickly. "Just a farm about an hour's drive. Quiet. Secluded. No one knows about it. You and your daughter would be safe there, at least until you figure things out." She looked at him, eyes narrowing despite her desperation. "Why would you offer that? To a stranger?" He met her gaze unflinchingly. "Because I've been a stranger needing shelter before. Someone helped me. I'm just passing it on." And in that moment, Emma made the second decision that would change her life forever. The farm appeared like something from a dream, hidden behind a row of pine trees, nestled at the foot of a gentle hill. A modest farmhouse with whitewashed wood and warm yellow lights glowing from the windows. Wildflowers lined the path, and, even in the stillness of night, Emma could smell jasmine and something faintly sweet. "This is home?" she asked softly as he helped carry Lily inside. "For now," he replied. "There's a guest room upstairs. Clean sheets. I'll grab you some tea." Emma hadn't expected the warmth that seeped into her bones as she stepped inside. The fireplace crackled. A kettle whistled softly on the stove, and books lined the walls. Real books, well-worn and loved. She hadn't expected kindness without conditions. Lily was asleep again, curled under covers that smelled like lavender and safety. Emma wandered back downstairs, intending to say thank you, but exhaustion caught up to her. She sank into a chair at the kitchen table, leaned her head on her arm just for a second, and slipped into sleep. When he returned, he found her like that. Fast, asleep. Her coat slipping off her shoulders, revealing deep bruises blooming down one arm. The collar of her blouse had shifted, exposing a scrape on her shoulder, red and raw. He stood still for a moment, and Emma felt, rather than saw his presence, even in sleep. Then quietly he set down the tea. He opened a cabinet, retrieved a small tin of antiseptic cream, and approached with careful steps. Kneeling beside her, he gently touched her arm, careful not to wake her. She flinched slightly, but didn't stir. With infinite tenderness, he dabbed cream onto the open wound, then smoothed a sterile pad over it. Emma's eyes blinked open. Their gazes met. He froze. She looked down at her arm, saw the open tin in his hands, and her heart stumbled. "You were—" "I'm sorry," he said, backing away, slightly. "I saw the bruises. I didn't want them to get worse. I shouldn't have—" "No," she said softly, covering herself with her scarf. "Thank you." In that moment, something passed between them. Not quite trust, not yet love, but the first spark of recognition. Two broken people who understood the weight of invisible wounds. 3 weeks later, Emma stood frozen in the kitchen, her hands trembling as she stared at the article on the open laptop. She'd only meant to close the screen after bringing him morning coffee, but the headline screamed at her in bold letters, "Disappeared Billionaire. The silent fall of tech prodigy, David Whitmore. Her eyes scanned frantically, heart pounding with each line. Co-founder of revolutionary AI startup. Visionary, genius. Then came the tragedy, his sister's death, the company scandal, the sudden resignation. He'd vanished from the public eye without explanation, and now here he was, living in a quiet farmhouse helping her, a woman running from nothing but pain. Emma? David's voice was gentle as he appeared in the doorway. Is everything all right? She turned, startled, face flushed as she stepped back from the laptop. I didn't mean to pry, I just saw— It's okay, he interrupted, his eyes soft. You were bound to find out eventually. Emma's voice was tight with hurt and confusion. Why didn't you tell me who you were? David looked down. Because I didn't want that to matter. She crossed her arms, suddenly feeling exposed and foolish. And yet it does. You're someone the whole world knows. I'm just a woman who barely escaped with her child in a suitcase. You're not just anything, Emma. Then why? Her voice rose. Why did you help me? Why bring me here? What do you want from me? David took a step closer but maintained distance, his voice steady. Nothing. I don't want anything. I just— He exhaled slowly. I wanted someone to see me without seeing all. That. Without the money, the title, the tragedy. I thought maybe you could. But Emma's walls, built through years of manipulation and control, weren't ready to come down. Well, maybe I can't, she said, her voice cracking. 6 months later, the courthouse steps were warm under the afternoon sun as Emma sat with Lily, both of them wearing new clothes. The first Emma had bought with her own money in years. Mama, are we really free now? Lily asked, her voice soft and unsure. Emma wrapped her arms around her daughter and whispered, Yes, baby, we are. For the first time, it was the truth. The divorce was finalized, full custody awarded, restraining order in place. Michael had never even shown up. His lawyer said he'd moved on and didn't contest anything. Moved on. As if 3 years of her life, of Lily's childhood, were just something to move on from. But Emma wasn't angry anymore. She was free. Working at the women's shelter had given her purpose. The women there looked at her with something she'd forgotten existed: respect. They listened when she spoke about rebuilding, about the slow process of remembering who you were before someone tried to erase you. You give us hope, one woman had told her. Proof that there's life after. Emma had started leading support groups, sharing her story, helping others find their voices. She'd even begun taking night classes, business administration, something she'd dreamed about before Michael convinced her she wasn't smart enough. She was becoming someone she'd never been before, herself, but stronger. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Handwritten address, no return label. Emma's name in careful script. Inside was a single photograph. The farmhouse, surrounded by blooming wildflowers. Spring had transformed it into something even more beautiful than she remembered. On the back, in the same careful handwriting, the door is always open, no expectations, no strings, just shelter if you ever need it. Emma stared at the photo for a long time, remembering the warmth of that kitchen, the sound of Lily's laughter echoing through rooms that felt like home. She remembered gray-green eyes that saw her scars and didn't look away. Hands that tended her wounds without asking for anything in return. She remembered feeling safe. Lily appeared beside her, looking at the photo. That's the house with the stars, isn't it, Mama? Where the nice man lived? Yes, sweetheart. I liked it there. I liked him. He made pancakes shaped like butterflies. Emma's throat tightened. You remember that? He was sad, but not scary. Sad, like Daddy. Quiet sad. Like he needed hugs but didn't know how to ask. Out of the mouths of babes, Emma looked at the photo again, and for the first time in months, she let herself wonder, what if? 2 weeks later, the truck's engine died as Emma turned off the ignition, her hands shaking slightly on the steering wheel. The farmhouse looked exactly the same. Whitewashed wood, yellow light spilling from windows, wildflowers swaying in the evening breeze. "Are we visiting?" Lily asked from the back seat, clutching Mr. Buttons. "I don't know yet, baby." Emma sat for a moment, gathering courage. She'd driven 8 hours to get here, had called in sick to work, had spent sleepless nights wondering if she was making a mistake. But she'd also spent sleepless nights wondering what if she didn't. The front door opened before she even knocked. David stood there in jeans and a worn sweater, his hair still tousled, his eyes still carrying that quiet sadness Lily had noticed. But when he saw them, something shifted in his expression, like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Emma." Her name on his lips sounded like coming home. "I got your letter," she said, suddenly feeling awkward. "The photo. I wasn't sure you'd come." "I wasn't sure either." They stood there for a moment, 3 feet and 6 months of uncertainty between them. Then Lily bounded past both of them into the house. "Can you make butterfly pancakes again? Mama said we might stay for a while." David's eyes met Emma's over their daughter's head. "Might?" Emma took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about what you said, about seeing you without all the rest of it." She paused. "I think I'd like to try," and for the first time in longer than either of them could remember, David smiled, really smiled. "I'd like that too." Emma woke to the sound of laughter floating up from the kitchen, Lily's giggles mixing with David's deeper chuckle. Sunlight streamed through curtains she'd helped him pick out in the bedroom that had slowly become theirs. Not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through quiet moments, shared morning coffees, David teaching Lily to identify constellations, Emma helping him plant a vegetable garden. The slow, careful building of trust between two people who'd learned that love wasn't about possession or control, but about choice, choosing each other every day. She padded downstairs to find them at the stove, both covered in flour, attempting what looked like pancakes. "Butterfly pancakes?" she asked, wrapping her arms around David's waist from behind. "More like abstract art pancakes," he admitted, leaning into her touch. "I like abstract art," Lily declared solemnly, then grinned. "Especially when it tastes like pancakes." Emma laughed. The sound still surprised her sometimes, how easily it came. Now, how natural joy had become in this house full of books and warmth and the kind of love that healed rather than hurt. She'd taken the wrong flight that night 6 months ago, but it had brought her exactly where she needed to be. David turned in her, arms, flower in his hair, love in his eyes. "Good morning," he said softly. "Good morning," she replied, and it was. Outside, the wildflowers bloomed in endless profusion, reaching toward the sun. The end.